Hi, everyone out there. We are live. Welcome to the Impact Series. My name is Jessica Lauretti, and I am the managing director of the Anthem Awards. This is the best time of the week. Every Thursday, we bring in amazing humans from all around the world who are working on incredible and important projects across all of the 7 core causes that we recognize with the Anthem Awards. If you're not familiar, the Anthem Awards are brought to you by the Webbies, and we are the biggest award platform that honors purpose and mission-driven work from brands, organizations, and individuals all around the world. We're currently in our 2nd season, and we are open for call for entries if you are working on anything from diversity, equity, and inclusion to sustainability, climate, and environment, and everything in between on any issue from any approach or perspective. We want to see what you are working on. We encourage you to enter your work. We have an extended entry deadline that is open now until October 21st. So if you're interested in entering, you can find out everything you need to know on our website at anthemawards.com. And we have links to everything across our social. We have a customer service team who is here to help you. So if you are not sure what categories to enter or how your work fits into all of this, you can reach out to Kara at anthemawards.com and she will help get you sorted. So without further ado, this is our Impact Series for this week. We are so happy to have Lara Joannides, Creative Diversity Lead at the BBC, welcoming us today to talk about their inaugural winning project. Congratulations, Lara, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, and thank you so much for our award. I actually need to show it off because it's so pretty. But I forgot to get it out of the cupboard. And I think everything that the Anthem Awards kind of stands for, was talking about, is pretty much the project. So great to be given a platform and to kind of get in touch with lots of like-minded.
Yes, so awesome. Thank you again for being with us, and thank you for joining us from London. I hope everything is okay. Also, I should just quickly say that our thoughts are with everyone who is in Florida and the southeast of the United States right now, who's currently being impacted by the hurricane. We hope people stay safe and are doing okay down there. Okay, now back to the interview. So Lara, tell us everything. Can you give us some background about your career and how you ended up in this role, and talk to us about what you do at the BBC for the 50/50 Equality Project?
Yes, a kind of a journalist by trade. So I'm actually a senior journalist, and everyone who's worked on up until now has also been a journalist. And we just really care about fair and making sure that we're telling stories about everyone in society and reaching represented. So I started at the BBC on something called the Journalism Trainee Scheme, which is in the journalists and the content makers we have with BBC, and different parts of news. So I have quite a broad and 24/7 rolling news channel, all the way to an African youth program. So I'm kind of used to seeing the different ways that news is told, and I've always felt really strongly that there are engaging with the way that we tell stories. You know, you've got a man in a suit behind a desk. It's really traditional to engage wider audiences and share different perspectives and stories. Started in news. It was the idea of one program maker on World TV, and he just was getting a bit frustrated with everyone talking about featuring and reaching out to female audiences, but nothing was really happening about it. It was a lot of talk and no action. Said, right, guys, on our program, and he and his whole program team agreed. They were like, let's just counting. December 2018 it was. They started counting every man and every woman that appeared in their program. That they weren't at 50%, and they thought they would. They thought they were already doing a really good job, and it just shows blinded by content we're always seeing. It's not balanced, even though we think it's doing it until they got to 50%. I've been doing it ever since, and it just grew, it mushroomed from there, basically. Straightforward. Each program or content team, because it could be digital, their own contributors that they are fixing, they are booking, that they are choosing whose story to tell and whose voices, and changing the way they think about who is the best contributor. And so who worked on 50/50, including myself, got involved because we were journalists, we heard about it, our programs were signed up to it, to kind of keep the project going and keep expanding it. So it's now well beyond news, a division of the BBC. So that includes kind of our long form comedy, drama, children's, sport, more than 150 now external partner organizations who are also doing it. Just media organizations, it's law, finance, fashion, academia. Everyone is a content maker these days, whether you're kind of a corporate or you all make content, social posts, internal comms, newsletters, whatever it is. So everyone.
It's so amazing. And I think you bring up such an interesting point too, because it's not just the diversity and representation on the screen, although that's certainly important, but also behind the screen, all of the people who are working on bringing every single programming to air every day, whether that's short form, whether that's long form or series or social, all kinds of different things. There's like the people who are booking the guests, the people who are doing the research, people who are writing the copy. There's so many different folks who go into creating media content. So can you talk a little bit about like, what does this diversity and representation, really mean for like how we create a more equitable society through its representation in media?
Yeah, so that's kind of one thing that has really been working in 50/50. Someone who didn't start out in diversity and inclusion, focus purely on who appears in our content, because it's produced themselves. Content makers want teams to kind of count their colleagues and do the workforce side of things, but thinking more carefully about who we're featuring in the content, UEs we're booking, the case studies we're following, having like a trickle down effect, and it's having a really positive knock-on effect of the storytelling. So one example is for some of our online teams, they started counting the byline by the online articles on the website. And at BBC News, for those of you who are familiar or follow, we don't, it's all very kind of BBC News, impartial, anonymous, but teams are starting to include bylines. And one of the editors came to me and said, I want to count this because in the 10 on her team who were saying, this is like a really long-term hard on it, I want to byline, whereas the women generally weren't putting themselves forward and asking for it, monitoring it to encourage everyone else in the team to put themselves forward and get that credit. And so it really has a big impact, and it's so it's like so symbiotic, because we always say you can't be it if you can't see it. So that has the impact of how things should be, and hopefully encouraging others. But then equally, have more diverse content in the background, they will naturally bring that to the content they're making, and bring that kind of and stories that maybe other people wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an exponential effect that this has, right? So it's like more representation in the stories that we're seeing reported on, and the people all around the world who are being represented as in the face of these stories in the media. But then it also is helping people build and grow their careers. So can you talk a little bit about that, and how this really supports DEI practices and how essential they are in the workplace? How does this really help us build and benefit professional settings?
Yeah, so one of the things that is really important to us external partners is that it's encouraging corporations and organizations to a range of people within their organization, because it was all the fact that to do 50/50, and we encourage them every month. We say, come on guys, you've got to do better. They would come crying, but we've gone to this major FTSE 100 or whatever, this other organization giving us male spokespeople. How much more can we do? And so we reached out to these companies in your pipeline. Why are you only giving, certain people that media training when because they're probably, if they're more senior, probably super busy and they just get handed a briefing note. They haven't really. So find that person who's actually really involved in that project and talk about it, probably from a much authentic and rounded view, and give them that opportunity, give media training. And then that will also help. It's, great career development when they go for their next promotion or for that next position in that situation, and what a good representative they are of their company. So that's one of the ways they're monitoring the spokespeople they're putting forward, and they're monitoring the people that they are kind of offering up in terms of, showing career development opportunities, or when they have kind of internal fireside. So for us at the BBC and for the media, it's been very much all our external work. It's very much kind of connected to the workforce.
Yeah, no, it's incredible because you really see how it affects both internal and externally. So that's so awesome. Can you tell us about your recent 50/50 challenge month? What is that? What took place? What were some of the results or outcome? How did it all go?
Yeah, so every year at the BBC, we have what we call 50 challenge month. So the way 50, all of our work towards a monthly deadline, or for some who work on longer figures at the end of the series, but everyone has to submit their figures at a regular kind of stages project, so that we have an overall view of how the BBC is doing. So it's accountability. We can see who's doing better, who's not doing so well, and try and help them. Every year is our 50/50 challenge, where we really kind of set a benchmark and say, we might have been struggling over the year. I mean, it's been a real challenge over the last 2 years with COVID. There's been a lot of staff, quite a few redundancies announced at the BBC, as lots of others have had issues. Then there was Ukraine and Russia. Before that, we had Brexit. So there's always representation in DE&I down the list.
In
exactly.
The yeah.
Challenge month is an opportunity for us to say, we really need to focus now, like ourselves, that we can do it, and to prove that it actually is completely feasible to have. But also it kind of sets in motion a lot of the hard, like foundational work in the later months, because it's not a case of, right, we're just going to cram in loads of women in the rest of the year. We're not really going to bother doing that, because what happens is you'll put all that hard work into experts on these subjects that maybe you wouldn't have spoken to before, and then actually you start to build a great relationship doing the interviews, and the next thing you know, someone who maybe BBC Breakfast found, and then you'll see on all the other radio stations, and what happens, as I'm sure happens in most places, really fantastic interview, and then all the other teams want to speak to them as well, which has been a bit of, normally been men, and now we're having that effect with women, and so we're starting to look more at contributors with disabilities and from ethnic minority backgrounds as well. So in March, what was that? I'm trying to remember. I think it was for the first month that any 50, whether they joined last year or whether they joined back in 2019, 35% of teams. That's out of, I think it was like 700 teams. And then only 1% of those teams achieve gender balance. So we're getting much closer to more teams, of course. But then on the other side, we can look at it on a sliding scale, and we all have less than 40% women. So if you're not achieving 50%, the majority above 40%. So we're getting there. It's taking time. And then is actually, we've noticed this trend every year that we've done the challenge month, is the longer teams take part in 50 are to get there. So for teams who've been doing 50/50 for the last 4 years, it was 69 balance. So we're hoping it's about kind of keeping it consistent and like staying at it, so that it just becomes a habit. It's not really a concerted effort, but you're just doing it without thinking about it.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's a great point too, because, when we talk about diversity, it's so much more than gender, race, sexual orientation, age, neurodiversity, ability. There are so many different perspectives that are important to include. And I think a lot of times when people start this work, it's like, oh, race and gender are kind of the first two that they look at, but there are so many different other perspectives from lots of different people that are important to include to really make sure we're having holistic representation, immigration status. I mean, you could go on from
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
different perspectives as well to include.
Mm.
Can you talk about what are the core principles? Like, how do you kind of like have this organized and set up and talk about what they all mean?
Yeah. So the thing for us, which is how we've been able to, I think, sustain 50/50 and keep it going, really simple. So this is the content makers themselves, the busy journalists who are up against it. We have to make sure that they can continue doing this over a sustained period. So we keep it really simple, and we have we basically have three core principles, and otherwise we work with the team's content as much as possible. So the first one is that change. So actually, really important point about 50/50 is that this is just about that holistic view, because it is, if you think about it, it is quite a crude tool. It's very, very difficult intersectionality or to capture the quality of that representation just by putting numbers in gender or someone's ethnic background. But it's about starting that conversation and really here is your representation balance before we even get into the quality of content. And we don't look at whether a woman has been featured as a case study or a financial expert, for example. So the first thing is we're collecting the data. The numbers are really important so that most important thing is that you use it in a way that will change your editorial decisions and inform your thinking. The kind of culture change that's happening, where it's now, it's very unusual to go out where this hasn't already been thought about and discussed. So hopefully that's kind of, everyone's already kind of a few steps into the journey, and now they're starting to think about the much more dealt rail. So that's the first principle. The second principle is we don't count control. So specifically for news teams, I say this all the time. So if anyone's heard, as much as we would love to change the world, we're still quite a way away from that. So particularly when you're covering world leaders, there are important people and key players who we have to feature in these big control over their gender or their background. So we simply don't count them for news, because that would be really unfair in terms of
That makes
progress.
right.
But we're quite strict with that rule, though. It is really just on the day news story. So it's a story that everyone else will be telling, and we have to include, and tell that story without mentioning them. So, for example, the Prime Minister, absolutely have to include the Prime Minister in that. But if you're thinking, well, we need, because yes, obviously we would need to talk to like a royal historian. There are many out there that you could choose from, so you can choose which one you talk to. So we try and make sure that teams don't, but everyone seems to like get the purpose. And then the final rule, which I would say is the final principle rule, is the best contributor always gets used. So it's not a quota system. If it gets from 16% women to 30% women, that's better, because it's more quality representation. Your work people, for whatever challenges you might have, to do that a bit quicker. But we don't want ticking exercise and say, right, we need to up our representation, so we're just going to cover a load of women's issues. So it's about using the best contributor who's the right person, but working that to find different people who are experts to talk about these different things.
Yeah, that's incredible. Can you tell us about where can people find out more about your project, and what's next for the 50/50 Equality Project? Tell us what we can look forward to.
So our website is pretty straightforward. It's bbc.com/5050. So have a look there. Like I said, we work with a lot of external organizations. Organization who creates content and wants to get involved and find out about being a partner, definitely drop us a line. We have a contributors database, which is for BBC producers, but it's open to anyone out there who has a knowledge base and an expertise that they want to offer to add themselves to them. So again, there's a link from our website there called, the link is called News Voices. That's what we call our day. So that's another way to get involved if you want to support and be part of that. And we're always looking for people to expand our data. 2,500 people on there now from all the world, speaking a range of languages, different. So yeah, please do check that out. And what we're doing at the moment, so I've touched on our expansion beyond gender. So in October 2020, we are monitoring gender. We're monitoring the balance of men and women to expand to ethnic. We're also including non-binary now as well. So that's been a bit of a big task because of data. I think you guys probably are familiar with having to grapple with that. So we've had to move everyone onto password protected whole thing, which kind of is difficult to balance with our very keep it simple rule. We've developed a tracker in partnership with Stanford University, their computational policy lab, and it's been brilliant. They've designed this whole new system for us, which we're in the process of rolling out at the BBC next month, which is a one-stop shop for all of our teams to enter their data in a compliant way, and it produces all these brilliant, like, colourful charts showing you how you're doing on day by day. I think is really important for these busy teams to see the visual impact in a really easy and simple. That's actually open source code that we're going to be offering out to people externally. I think Stanford are working on that kind of publicly in the first quarter of next year. So yeah, watch that space because that's going to be to share with everyone. And hopefully it'll be something that we're as well.
Well, it's so amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today. And just thank you for all the work that you are doing. I know that I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are kind of like, I want to do that, but I don't know where to start. And just applaud your effort in the space, and also just encourage everyone to just start and to keep working on it. And you might mess up, but then there's an opportunity to fix it and try it again. And just any effort that we make is positive and progress. So just encourage folks for that, and to go to the BBC site for all of the resources and information that they share there. Thank you everyone again for being with us today. And don't forget, we have our extended entry deadline on October 21st. So make sure you get your work in. 7 core causes from all different industries. We have journalists, we have brands, we have nonprofit organizations. Anthem is really the home and the platform in this space for everyone who cares about social impact work and is a part of this community. So we hope you'll join us and be a part of what we're building. So again, everything's at anthemawards.com, and we hope you'll participate. Laura, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great, I hope everything's great. Say hello to the team.
Yeah, thanks. And good everyone who's entering this year.
Yes. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.